going home on leave just after boot camp training, and I weighed 185 pounds. And I remember the coach, I stopped by and see the football coach at that time, and he said, "Boy, why wasn't you that size when you was playing for me?" But it was kind of humorous, and we laughed about some of those things. I also, after the Navy, and I maybe ought to tell you a little bit about what I did in the Navy. I took the boot camp training, and then I went back, and there was one incident happened in my life that Dad and Mom needed help on the farm, and so I got a leave. And I went home on this leave to help Dad do some farm work, and most of that was just harvesting the grain. And when I got home, it started to rain, and it rained, and it rained, and all the time I was there putting there, we didn't get very, very little grain cut. And so I had the Red Cross to try to get me extension on my leave just a little longer so I could help with the crops, because Dad really needed the help. And they wrote me back and told me that it was approved and I would be able to go ahead and have another extension on my leave. And it went on for about a week, and we did get a lot of her crops cut, most all of them over in Liston. And I remember seeing Mother coming down the road, dust just a flying. And she came out to where we was at, and she says, "I got a letter for you from the Navy." And I looked at the letter, and it said that I was AWOL. I was over the hill, and I was violating their code, and I was to report to the nearest shore patrol. And so I immediately went home and got ready and went to Crass Junction, caught the train, went to Salt Lake City, and reported to Shore Patrol there, and they give me a certificate showing that I'd reported to them and told them in that certificate why that I was AWOL, that there was an error through the Red Cross. But I went into San Diego, and when I went through the gate, they see that I was over my leave, and they threw me in the brig. And I spent some time there, 3, 4, 5 days. I don't know just exactly how long now. But
what's the brig?
It's jail. And they threw me in there, and I had a Commodore's mass, or a Commodore's hearing. It's a little court hearing with it was required to go through the lieutenant commander, who was the second in command of the base first, and that was the first hearing I had. And he told me that I needed to have another hearing, and it would be with the Commodore. And I remember the Commodore looking me straight in the eye, and boy, he looked clean through me when he looked at me. And he said to me, he says, "Sailor, what you got to say for yourself?" And I said, "Sir, I have nothing to say other than that the Red Cross, as you have the Red Cross telegram there, stating it said that I had an extension on my leave, and that and evidently it wasn't so. And that's about all I can say, sir." And he paused for a few seconds, which seemed like an hour. And then I remember the words that he said. He looked straight at the lieutenant commander, who was the second in command of base, and he said, "How in the hell did this ever get to me?" And he says, "Case dismissed, report back to transportation where you did work, and tell your commanding officer that you're there, and report to him." And I did. And then the next morning, I had a phone call from the Commodore. It came in on the telephone line that the dispatcher took on, and he hollered at me and he says, "You're wanted on the line," and it's the Commodore. And I thought, oh no, what did I do now? And he asked me if I wouldn't chauffeur for him, and if so, I would come over right at that time, and I did, and he said, I'll take care of the paperwork. You tell your officer in charge there that I will take care of the paperwork. And so I did that, and it was quite an experience and a very enjoyable experience. And the lieutenant commander, I remember Lieutenant Commander Ketchum was the one that had the first court hearing with, and I just happened to think of that. I thought I'd like to give you that name. But the Commodore was Commodore Francis Scanlon, and he was a really nice person, and he was very sincere in that. He made it so that when I got discharged, that I reported to the discharge area, and when they looked at my paperwork that I had with me, they took me all the way up to the front of the line, and there was a line there that was probably a block or more long, and I went all the way to the front and had me discharged out of there in a matter of just a very short time, and I was on my way home.
This is the ending of the recording of Dad in December of 2003. However, I do have a section of a recording that was completed on May 10th, 2003. We had done an original recording of Dad, and the first part of it did not work, so we re-recorded in December. So this is the May 10th, 2003. It starts in with him talking about his painting.
And I would say I must have been about the 4th grade, and I remember the art teacher I was trying to think of her name, and I can't at the moment. McCary, Mrs. McCary, she asked us to draw pictures of whatever we'd like. And I remember drawing a picture, and then she asked us to put a picture on a piece of board and paint it. And of course, those days we was using watercolors. And I took a picture that I liked real well, and I put a stream of in, and I remember putting some mountains in and some trees in, and I put in 2 deer. And both the deer, one was a male, one was a female deer, of course. And I remember painting those. And I asked her if I could do some other things, and she gave me permission. That other thing was that I had a burning needle that you could burn the outline of something, and I remember just barely burning the outline of all the deer and the elk and the stream and everything, the shoreline of the stream and things like that. And then I remember I painted it with watercolors. And when it was done, it was, I thought, was extremely good. And she, of course, gave me an A on it. And later on in life, after I'd grown up in that, I remember seeing that painting that Mother had, and I looked at it, and it was really, really good. And I thought, boy, I would like to do that someday. Well, my wife Marion, one day, she went and bought me some pictures to be painted by the number. And the kids, and that was involved, I'm sure somebody was anyway, in regards to how they came about. Nevertheless, I painted that picture by the number. And I wasn't satisfied with that, because it was just putting a color in number 1, another color number 2, and so on. And it was artificial painting. And I remember that when it went to come to the second one, that I took colors that we had, and I kind of just mixed my own colors and just made a picture. And then once I received, again, I don't know what the occasion was, whether it was my birthday or what, I had some more oil paints that came in with brushes and things like that. And I painted them on canvas, and I enjoyed that a lot. And back in the first old days, I took a course a little bit in regards from some special person that came around to teach artwork and that. And he showed us how to prepare our own regular canvas with rabbit skin glue and so on. and then pursuing paint. And I recall painting once a picture, and I was enthused in what I was painting. And all once I looked and there wasn't anybody in the class. I was wondering where they'd gone, and I went to get up and they were all standing behind me with the instructor behind, and he was having them watch how I was painting and what I was doing. And that picture happened to be a copy of Robert Woods that I was been viewing in that, and I still treasure that picture this day. It was a nice picture.
Now, you did on-the-job training. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, the on-job training required when you served in the service, if you had an opportunity, if you would like, to go to school or take on-job training or whatever. So I took the on-job training, which was under the tutoring of my father, which was at that time was a blacksmith. He was constructed many different things, and he could weld and do just about most anything. And I took some classes at Utah State University up there, and one of those classes was blueprint drawing and sketching and reading. Another was welding, and another was in the machine shop doing machine work. And there was a couple things happened when it came into the welding class. There was quite a number of us there. I would say probably 32, 34 people in that class. And we was to certify in welding. And I remember I was the first to certify and complete my welding course. And many of the people that was in there was, of course, older than I was, and had much experience in welding and that, and yet they didn't pursue that. And didn't get, some of them never did get certified. But it made me kind of feel pretty good that I certified first. And that happened in life later on as I worked in with a company, Chemical Corporation, that was acquired then for a certification in welding. And I too was, even though I had to start, was the first to start. In fact, I was the last to be called to start in welding, and I was the first to finish and the first to certify. And so I felt pretty good about the welding and that.
Is there, before we move on to some other questions that I have, is there anything you wanted to talk about as far as your schooling or any special friends you had or anything like that that we haven't mentioned already?
Well, there's always been special friends, and that Darrell Smith, Warren Hamp were real special friends, and we did a few things together in life that were fun things. And even one of the neighbors down below, Don Hughie and his wife, they became quite good friends, and it invested me into raising chickens and things like that. And it was some of their highlights in our life, but it was also an income in some of the things that we did. I can't think of any others right at the moment.
Okay. When did you join the Navy? You were out of high school, or?
It was in 1945, I believe, 44 or 45. I was 17 years old at the time, and World War II was on.